Welcome back to Restless. My name is Father Joseph Gill, priest of the Diocese of Bridgeport, Connecticut. You've joined Matt, who's losing it over there.
I'm laughing because I was hoping that your intro would just start detracting. You just start ripping into the two of us.
Well, he hasn't gotten to me yet. Maybe he's
Well,
going to.
detraction.
Be patient, Matt.
Detraction means the person's not in the room, right?
Oh, does it?
Does it? Or I don't know. I don't know. Like talking behind someone's back.
I mean, that's probably
I
the
see.
primary way it occurs, but I definitely am good enough at detraction to do
detract.
it.
We just talked about how people can't even look people in the eye, right? So there's no way they're detracting.
Someone
right
who's
in
really
front of you.
clever can detract from somebody without them knowing about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's
For sure.
true. That's
For sure.
true. Yeah, I mean, like we could talk about like Matt's beard.
But I think you
you
might
want.
be aware of that, though.
Yeah.
His beard?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if we were to talk
You're-
about bearded
now you're-
people in general and the various moral failings,
So yes, yeah,
Yeah.
most bearded people.
yeah, having freshly been clean shaven not that long ago, but
That's true. Yeah.
I've lost the beard, so
No.
I almost just said, not so clever, huh? But that would have been detraction. Right in front of you.
but luckily you said I almost said, and therefore
no, see, I
anything
don't-
after that
I
is
don't
yeah,
think-
this is
canceled
the
out, yeah.
equivalent of no offense.
I don't think
That's right.
detraction is the same as an insult. I think detraction is kind of more
Is it
purposely
not? I mean-
behind.
So I think an insult's probably a species of detraction, if I had to guess.
I would have to look at Aquinas on that one. I don't know, but I would.
What does he know?
always thought detraction was simply just speaking about someone negatively when they're not
Interesting.
there, you know,
I see.
behind,
Okay.
behind
all
their
right. Well,
back.
let's work with.
We
So-
should
let's
work that out before
with-
the episode
yeah.
started. I think what actually detraction was. That would have been a really good thing to already have worked out by us. I think this is how professional
Yeah.
we are.
Yes,
We're still figuring out what we're talking about
Exactly.
in this episode.
that's not true. We actually have a great plan, and I hope you stay tuned. Don't just delete us right now.
Or you could listen to the tangent.
You definitely shouldn't. Do that.
Let's detract from
Yeah.
the tangent. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can all agree that nobody should do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, they don't rib on us as much as we rib on them.
The tangent.
Yeah, have you ever
Probably
brought up
some of our
Restless?
insecurity, probably.
I would say we brought you up a couple times.
Oh, good. Hopefully,
Yeah.
Adulation.
It's actually
Great
funny enough. It's
positive
usually,
ways, right?
It's usually when we're not recording and it's a joke behind your guys' back.
So it is detraction.
Yeah,
All right,
but
that's
it's
fair.
a joke. It is a well-intended joke.
So okay, so
Yeah.
that is an interesting distinction
Caveat.
we need to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
right now, right? So Aquinas talked about a jocular lie, right? Like if I were to go up to you and say, "Hey, guess what, man? Pigs are flying," right? You would
Yeah,
kind of know
yeah.
that's a joke,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so
So I'm an idiot.
is it okay? Like, is it okay to say something negative about somebody that everyone else knows is a joke? And that happens to me all the time because so I just finished teaching another year. One of the consistent feedback I always ask at the end of the year if the kids can give me some feedback on how I can be a better teacher.
Mhm.
Inevitably, one or two students will write on a little card. They'll say, "Stop making mean jokes."
Right.
Because I like to rib the kids pretty hard.
Yeah, I know.
And so like last year, I started off the year by saying, "Look, guys, I got the feedback that I need to stop making mean jokes, so I'm going to stop doing that." And all of the boys, only the boys, are like, "No, that's the
Right.
best part of class.
Right,
we love
right,
it. You
right,
keep
yeah.
tearing us down." Because I could like walk into class and be like, "Hey, Edward, you're fat," and he would bust out laughing. You know, obviously I can't say that to a girl.
Notably, Edward isn't very fat.
Edward
It's
is
worth
not
noting.
fat. No, Edward is very thin. So that's why I
Very
said,
athletic person.
but that's why I said jocular lie. Because
Yeah.
if I made fun of like Edward's, I don't know,
Right.
nose and his bad nose, like
Yeah.
that would not be as
Does Edward
funny.
have a bad nose?
No, his
Okay,
nose is
there you go.
rather
Right.
average, I would say.
Okay. Fair enough.
So
But yes.
does it matter how the person takes it, or
Yeah, I do think there's an extent to which offense is taken, not given. At least in some situations. But at the same time,
most Aquinas says, he says communication is given according to the mode of the receiver.
right. And so so I think it's also just important as the speaker to try to have some appreciation for the person to whom you're speaking, and how are they going to receive this. Like maybe maybe someone who is a little overweight, maybe you could joke with them about a lot of things, but that's not one thing you shouldn't joke with them about. And so
Yeah,
that's fine, right?
there are some things you cross the line.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And so I think it's important to really, be prudent in the way that you want to have a relationship with somebody. The first time you meet somebody, you shouldn't be making fun of them. Certainly not in a severe way, right? I mean,
Right,
it's
yeah.
one, this sort of like the common kind of male sort of like ribbing that is sort of light enough that it's generally speaking accepted, I think. But like I have friends, with whom I can make, much more what would sound like very harsh jokes if you weren't part of the friend group. But in the friend group, we all understand that this is a joke based on this thing that we all have the shared experience of, and it's fine.
Right. And people make fun of my bald head all the time.
But
and I'm totally fine with that. Like,
but I
it's
will
cool.
I will
It's cool.
say this happened to me before, where you make those jokes about somebody, and then a third party hears it, and they interpret it as you being mean to that person, and they'll make it. Then and this can be a real problem. So even though it's the case that maybe among friends a joke is okay, that it might also be the case that in mixed company, that's not a joke you make. You wait until you know you're in private, and then
Yeah.
it's
That's
when
true.
we're all friends
That
here.
is true.
But especially I think for you as a priest, for me as a seminarian, like, I've tried to really scale back some of the jokes I might otherwise make, because it's like, all right, this is objectively probably innocuous enough, but
Yeah.
some
Scandal, man.
some pious person is going to hear it and get really worked up about it, and I don't want to scandalize them or
That's an
create a
issue.
headache or something like
That's
that.
an
So
issue. Yeah. I mean, I made a.
You don't have to confess your sins on the air.
For example,
For example, here's a bad joke I made.
That's right.
No, but also you have to consider like what sometimes we think that it's not causing harm to the person, but like I
Yeah.
remember growing up, I had a friend named Charlie who was like the brunt of all our jokes, and he laughed about it, and he was like he was like a mediocre sports player and just kind of like a short kid, and so we always kind of made fun of him and everything. In fact, we had what we called the triple crown of insults. It was you're fat, you're ugly, and no one likes you. And so we'd just be like, hey Charlie, you just won the triple crown. Like that would be like that.
Ouch.
Be the joke.
Ouch. Yeah.
So
ouch,
fast
ouch.
forward to like 10 years later, I see him posting on Facebook saying, guys, this is the 1 year anniversary of my suicide attempt.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, my jaw hit the floor, and I'm like, holy cow! Like Charlie, I had no idea you were struggling with this. Like, and I don't think he was struggling with it when I knew him as a 13, 14-year-old.
Right. Yeah.
But you have to wonder, did that contribute to some of his negative thoughts that ended up going down a bad path? And he's thankfully he's doing alive and well now, but
on a path of healing, hopefully.
Yeah.
but I never knew.
But that's why it has to be predicated on an actual relationship where there's mutual affection. Like one of the priests in seminary, the priest I lived with my first year, he's sort of famous for this in homilies. He's extremely truly the holiest man I've ever met in my life. Very good man, wonderful homilist, and he loves to kind of work in little like house jokes, and it was not evenly distributed. By which I mean, like, yeah, I don't know how bell curves work exactly, but whatever the most is, that was where I was situated, and then it was sort of declining from there. But it was fine because I knew that he respected me, right? Because he and I had a great relationship, and so in his last homily in the year, he made 3 jokes at my expense.
Oh
Oh
my goodness!
Even homily, but it was hysterical, and I actually, to be honest, looked forward to it because it was a funny thing. The whole house could get a laugh out of it. It wasn't mean spirited. But there are people he didn't do that for. And I'm sure it's because he was smart enough to know that person really would not receive it well. You know what I mean?
At the same time, I wonder if the other people felt left out because they weren't included in the joke. Because I've had that experience too, where people have been joking with each other, and I'm like,
it's like The Office where Mike says, man, like I love inside jokes. I'd love to be a part of one day.
Right. Right.
Right.
It's interesting too. I mean, if you're looking to the saints, right? Like Saint Philip Neri famously used humor as a manner of humility, and there's an author named Dr. Holly Ordway who wrote a biography of Tolkien, and in that biography she says that Tolkien really tried to emulate that, whereby almost to the point where she expresses that she was shocked at how like foolish he was willing to make himself look to develop humility. Now the thing is, and I have attempted that before. Just like you tease yourself, and
that's always a safe.
Right, and well, that's what I'm saying. Is that the alternative, basically, that you make fun of yourself so as to not make fun of someone else and potentially either scandalize or hurt?
I will never forget one school where I was teaching. There was a 6th grade boy who walked in one day with a big sign around his neck that said "loser," and now this is one like the cool kids, like he was athletic, everyone liked him. And I was like, James, like, take that off, man. You're not a loser. He said, I know, but I want to wear it so that kids make fun of me and not each other. I was like, wow, that's really awesome. Like, wish I had that courage,
I do think that there is one risk to making fun of yourself, which is that it can be a way to solicit compliments.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, like, I look terrible today. Meanwhile, like, you actually put a lot of effort into your outfit and you're trying to solicit a compliment. And it can be done subconsciously where it's like, I don't know. I'm sorry. My homily was probably terrible. I'm sorry to make you listen to it. And it's like, actually, Father, your homily was very, very good. That's what they're going to say.
Right.
So you know what? Maybe just so I actually, that's something I tried to avoid because that was actually a tool that I would use a lot to try to set people at ease. Would be to kind of make fun of myself or something like that, or to apologize, sort of like jokingly for things. Then I realized that people were the response that people would have is just to compliment me. Or something like that, and just
you're a genius.
You're the best,
right?
Ever.
So actually, what I try to do now
true.
is avoid that self-consciously if I think it's going to lead to that.
That reminds me of C.S. Lewis's definition of humility. He said, humility is not thinking less of yourself; it's thinking of yourself less.
Sure.
What a great insight, right? It's just, and a true saint, doesn't make themselves the center of attention, positive or negative. Really, they glorify God, and using yourself as an example only when necessary.
Right.
And so I try, especially in homilies, like a lot of priests will just talk about themselves and their life, and I try not to do that very much.
Really? I don't know if I've noticed that.
Really?
Maybe I mean, well,
You go to good mass.
Yeah.
But-
Who are the people I've heard preach the most in the last like 2 years? Well, you,
I
you know, and Father Suarez. So
mean, growing up, I had
he's a good homilist.
and I hope this isn't detraction. I'm trying to use an example. He's since deceased. A good man, very holy man who baptized me, gave me my first communion. But he was in recovery and was very, very upfront about the fact that he was an alcoholic and struggling with that. And so like almost every homily, he'd bring up some story about him in recovery, and like, well, that's really inspiring. But like after the 10th one, you're like, all right, I kind of know where this is going.
Right.
You know.
That's funny. Yeah.
All right, so we talked about humor, but the question is, you know, when is it appropriate to even sometimes bring up someone else's flaws? And I can think of 2 instances that I get questions about a lot. First of all, so I teach in a school, and as you know, Matt used to teach there as well. And in the teachers' lounge, we would often have to talk about students. You know, gosh, can you believe what so and so did today? Or like, you need to know that this so and so is struggling with X, and like,
right.
I mean, do I really need to know that? I don't know, but you know, so
is detraction just? I know that we were trying to clarify the term before, but is detraction not only an insult, but also potentially basically oversharing? You're giving knowledge that
I think detraction can be true, and
Here's-
it also be problematic.
here's the definition. I had to go look
This
it up.
is good.
Here's the definition from Merriam-Webster. Detraction is a lessening of reputation or esteem, especially by envious, malicious, or petty criticism,
Yeah.
right.
or a taking away, detracting one's good reputation among others.
Right. So, like, because the reason I ask is because there could very well be a situation where one professional. I mean, teacher's a good example because it's with kids, and like if it's a kid, it's a particularly sensitive example, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you could say this colleague or this student is struggling with suicidal thoughts. Like, we know this, and I'm letting you know so you can keep an eye out. And the truth is, to an extent, right, that might decrease, quote unquote, like the perceived reputation of a person, because it's not a good thing to be struggling with that. You know, like I now know an illness you have.
Yeah.
Right. But obviously that's not malicious.
At the same time, you know, we have a demerit system at our school where if you just break an infraction, you get a demerit. And that the demerits are published for all the teachers to see.
Right.
So I can go on there and see, oh, you know, Johnny got 6 demerits this month, you know,
Right.
and they tell me exactly what it's for. So it's like, you know, do I need that? I mean, should I look at that? I mean, because it does help a little bit being like, okay, Johnny's really struggling in this area. Maybe it's talking in class. Or,
Right.
you know,
Right. 5 out of 6.
Not turning in homework on time. And like, okay, well, then I can give him a little extra TLC in that area. But at the same time, like, is it better to not know it so that I don't necessarily come in with a preconceived notion and he loses reputation in my sight?
To be honest, I would actually say you probably don't need to know that. I think somebody in the school probably needs to have all of it so that it's not the case that somebody's going around breaking the same rule with different people. And
Right.
getting away with
Which
it.
does happen.
But probably not the case that every teacher needs to see that. And frankly,
Yeah.
It probably does lead. I mean, it's a human thing, right? You see something about somebody and it affects how you treat them. So
It does.
I you know, this last semester, we were teaching. I had a couple classes I had to teach 8th graders in the Catholic school about different things. One of them was about the 10 Commandments, and I remember reading through the catechism sections on it. I don't have it all at my fingertips, but I remember what I essentially came up with for them was you have to think to yourself like, all right, A, is what I'm about to say true? B, is it really my right to share it? And C, like, why am I doing this? Is this something that the person I'm telling it to has a right to know? Is it meant to be helpful, or because you can say something about something that's true, and maybe even it's something that they did to you that was wrong, and so you almost kind of feel like you have this sort of moral, kind of like permission to share it.
Yeah.
But why are you sharing it? Are you sharing it because like you're venting? Are you sharing it because you want to alert the other person about a potential risk or something like that? Or are you sharing because you want to shape the way your present interlocutor views the person you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I almost ought to be like, yeah.
You are in good company because that sounds exactly like what Aristotle said. He said the 3 gates are: is it true, is it necessary, is it kind?
Right.
So great minds think alike, and also way to go for using the word interlocutor in a conversation.
Thank you.
That was props.
It's only for the compliment, so I appreciate that you recognize that.
Fishing for that one.
But I frankly, I'll speak about myself, because why not?
Because I'm basically the best.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about the thing I know the most
Aristotle,
about.
Joe.
That's right. Sure.
Well, clearly they think
address
alike,
We'll address
so.
the ranking of those later. But I know that
He's dead and you're alive.
I enjoy making people laugh, right? But I know that about myself that I can take that too far, and I can use that as an excuse. So, I mean, a dozen times a day at least, I'll share something to get a cheap laugh, and I'm like, that was just to get a cheap laugh. I shouldn't have done that. And literally last night, I began to share it with the priest I live with, something a parishioner had done that was a parishioner that annoys me had done that I thought was funny and that was stupid of her to do. And I started that I was like, okay, you have to stop. There's no reason for you to share what you're about to share. So I just kind of aborted the sentence when I was that's atypical. So to be honest, right? So like this is in my own life. This is a constant like every night at the exam. It's like I probably didn't need to tell that story. Probably didn't tell that joke. Probably didn't need to share what that person had done. So it can be difficult in the moment because
it can be.
You're in a conversation. You want to have something to say. You say all of a sudden you're like, that wasn't really mine to share, or that wasn't really a charitable thing to say.
More silence is less sin, really, a lot of times. But
that's so hard.
Yeah, but it's such a struggle. I mean, I walk out of school every time, and it's a lot of times with conversation like, oh, I shouldn't have said this, shouldn't have said that.
And frankly, sometimes people do things that are so obnoxious to you that you're like, I can't believe I had to go sit through that. Like I have to complain to somebody. Like, to be honest, sometimes sometimes that makes it difficult. It's like I feel like I have the right to complain about this to somebody.
Yeah.
So
maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. You know what I mean?
So that's an important question, though, right? So is venting ever appropriate?
I know that there are some who say yes and some who say no.
But what do you say?
Because it is a relief, right? It's a relief to share one's burden with another human being.
So I would say this, and this is literally just for me. So
your
don't get to do
your
it.
morality is not your morality is not my morality.
Subjectivism. No. I'm an external processor, which means that I have to. Like ironically, we ended up not doing the family life episode today, but in order to prepare for that episode, which we didn't do today, I was like, Renee, I need to talk to you about this subject. I cannot, I have to say it out loud. Otherwise, my thoughts are going to be all jumbled and I'm going to be figuring it out on the spot like I am right now.
Most wives are saying to their husbands, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about? Renee never says that with Matt. We know exactly what's on his mind at all times.
Actually, can you talk about yourself less?
Keep it in.
We had been dating for like 6 weeks and I was like, Renee, this is great. We are so good at communicating. She was like, no. You're good at talking. I'm good at listening.
Right. And that's what you need in a relationship.
I was like, yeah, it's perfect.
Talker.
Right. But so I have to, because it would be clearly very unhealthy for me to keep something that is eating away at me inside, bottled up for the rest of my life, and then I die. Right? That's a John Mulaney joke that he talks about how Irish people keep their anger bottled up, and then they die, and that's how it ends. Right? But that's
that may be true.
Right. That's like an inappropriate, course to take. So I have to talk about it out loud. Now the thing is, does that then allow me to then be unbelievably mean? Of course not.
Well, what about writing it in a journal or talking it out loud to God?
Right. Well, so I do try and do that. And probably maybe I should exclusively do that.
Well, I think if that's not going to be enough, then I do think it's worth finding one person who you can actually trust to keep things to themselves. Everybody thinks,
right.
I'm telling you this in confidence. Like, all right, well, you just told me all the juicy things. Then you said I'm telling it to you in confidence. Maybe if you'd led with that, I would have said, don't tell me at all. You know what I mean? So
right.
And, everybody thinks, I can tell one person. So it's actually important to have somebody be like, all right, this actually does need to die with you. I need to get off my chest.
I've got a spiritual director. You got a spiritual director, and you got a spiritual director, and with spiritual direction. That's what the whole thing is. I can vent to my spiritual director,
right?
Because I do need his advice,
right?
And
the other time I think it can be permissible, obviously, sort of, given that it's done as most charity as possible, to rant or to vent about something, is if it could actually affect a change. So, for example, I'll avoid giving specifics, but this last year,
bad things happened.
I was afflicted with a particularly awful human formation conference day situation. And I was the whole day, I was almost shaking with anger at how unseriously it was taken and how much of a waste of my time it was.
Right.
And
what's the topic?
I'm not gonna, because people won't know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'll tell you off air. But
okay, fair.
But so
can I know too? No, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna tell Father. He'll tell you. Okay?
Yeah.
That's how it works.
I was so angry about it, and I was trying to avoid complaining about it. A, just to avoid complaining. B, because there were some other reasons why I was trying to avoid complaining about it. But I was like, I need to tell somebody. So I told my spiritual director, who also happens to be involved with planning these things. I was like, Father, I need to tell you this because it was so profoundly insulting to me that I was forced to sit through this, that it just can never be allowed to happen again. And so I went on for like a good 10 minutes about it. I'm gonna be honest. And Father can tell you, like, I have a very colorful way of complaining about things. Sometimes I can muster the English language to really distract on things if I really want
Well,
to.
if you
So
use interlocutor in a sentence,
I went
then
on
clearly.
So I went on for a period of time, and I was like, all right,
Mastery of the language.
that's all I want to say. I needed to say it. It's off my chest now. And he's like, great. I feel like that was fine. Like, I feel like you didn't take it too far or anything. I hear you. I agree with you in part. So I think in that situation where you're like, this could actually lead to change.
Yeah.
But that's different from saying, like, I'm going to complain about something for an hour. It's like, would you tell him this? Oh, I'm not going to tell him this. I'm telling you this. Like, well,
That's fair.
Unless you think I'm going to tell him this, then all you're doing is complaining about him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, there's been different times I've spoken with, particularly like the principal at the school. The student, and it has changed, has made an impact in terms of changing the way we address this issue.
Yeah, same.
Trying to help understand.
I mean, and the thing is, you could also go to your superior about a colleague, and I don't mean like just to complain, but if there's an actual infraction occurring, you know.
Yes, but doesn't Jesus say, right? Go to your brother first.
Sure.
Now that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. How do you do that? Have you ever had to do that? I mean,
not for a colleague, or at least I haven't for a colleague.
Yeah, I think the colleague bit is important because like power differentials, I think, can change the equation a little bit. This is something actually I've been thinking a lot about because there's a situation in seminary where there's a particular person that I really had an issue with, and I had the opportunity to have like a sort of a public, to make a comment about the thing I was aggravated about publicly, but I felt like I needed to talk to them about it personally. So I asked my spiritual director about it, and what we basically decided was, like, if you're going to do it public, you have to also confront him about it first. And so I decided to hold off because this person is in a position of authority, and I decided, well, I'm not really done with, like, we're not really done with, our relationship's not done. I don't want to put myself in a position to be reciprocated against, or him in the position to have to, like, fight against that temptation. So I felt like this can wait for now. But I was trying to take. I think it's important to take seriously that you can't just immediately go over someone's head in every situation. I think sometimes you have to, if you're talking about your immediate supervisor, maybe confronting them just isn't an option, right? Because they have the power to make your life miserable.
Miserable, yeah.
Right.
And especially if you have reason to believe that that's something they're going to do. But I do think that means going to their supervisor and not to your colleagues or to their peers.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It still, I think, probably doing something that could, because I think probably part of the point of that whole thing is to channel the things you want to complain about to actually changing them. So,
right. That should be the goal.
Yeah. So not just like, I'm going to complain to you about it, but I'm going to complain to the person who could change it, you know?
That's a great insight.
Yeah. And I do think that there is something to be said for, in those moments, right? You can be really heated, you know? So, like, in the heat of the moment, maybe you don't have the presence of mind to say, well, you know, I'm going to do this instead of this. And so you take that, it's almost like a safe route, you know, where you say, you know what, I'm going to the superior who can make the change that I can't change to try and fix an injustice.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, well, because if I don't do that, I'm going to boil over. And it's going to explode, and it's going to be way worse for everybody involved, myself, them, my superior, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think one of the keys that all of us can work on cultivating is to receive that kind of correction well. And that's hard. You know, when someone comes up to us and say, hey, you need to do this differently.
Yeah.
Oof, you know, you kind of just take the bristle.
Yeah.
Because it may not be motivated by a good motivation, but there might be a kernel of truth in it.
Yes.
You know, so we have to find what the kernel of truth is.
Yes.
And deal with that. But it's challenging. One of the phrases from the Psalms that I pray pretty regularly is, you know, keep, O Lord, a guard over my mouth, keep watch at the door of my lips. You know,
Me too.
do you pray that?
Yeah.
I actually had that on a sticky note on my bedroom door in the seminary last year.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay. 3 over talkers.
That's right,
Okay. Yeah. Lord, set a guard over my lips, no doubt.
Keep watch at the door of my mouth. Yeah.
Well, I didn't. I say the first part, but I should say both parts.
Well, it's okay. It's all right.
One thing at a time, I
The
guess.
Lord,
right?
Lord knows what you mean.
I receive your correction,
But
and will.
But I mean, St. James talks about the tongue and like a fire. You know, fire's very helpful. It can warm your food, keep you warm, and everything. It can also destroy a house, and it's so true with the tongue. The power of life and death is in the tongue, and I'm sure you probably remember perhaps maybe an unexpected compliment that someone paid you that maybe set your life on a different trajectory, and you probably remember an unfair criticism that also wrecked your day. So the power of life and death is in the tongue. It says in the Old Testament somewhere. So I don't know where. Yeah. So use it well. Use it well.
And I mean, if you want to bring that into like the theological realm, right? Faith comes from what is heard, right? So that's how powerful your quote tongue is, you know.
It is, and that's that's something. So I've always thought so interesting is that in teaching the faith, it is a lot of auditory. Like I can't.
Oh yeah.
It's not that hands on, right? You can. I mean, yeah, I can take kids down to a sacristy and we can feel the wine and smell the
Yeah.
not feel the wine, that's just sticky. I can feel
wet,
the bread
it's
and smell the wine and like all so that's a little sensory, but like how do you feel the Trinity? How do you experience the Trinity, right? It's just something that you have to hear and believe,
Right.
so it does come from hearing, which makes it difficult for our tongues to make sure that only good things come out to glorify God, because someday our tongues hopefully will be singing God's praises for all eternity. So,
Amen.
Sobering thought. And on that note, we wrap up. So thanks for joining us in this episode of Restless. Keep your tongue from evil. Indeed, spread only the good news of other people. Be judicious in when we need to correct. Ask yourself, is it necessary, kind, and true? And seek, if you have a need to vent, make sure that it's done in the spirit of charity and hopefully with a view to the change that you think is possible, because our tongue has the power of life and death. You can find us on Veritas Catholic Network, 1350 AM, 103.9 FM, YouTube, and lots of other platforms and wherever you get your podcasts. So tune in next time to Restless.
All right, let me tell you something.
That was good.
That guy, Joe, I can't believe him.